What's going on YouTube? My name is Sweat. Welcome back to another Apex Legends video. In today's video, we're going to be covering Revenant and some tips and tricks that you're going to need to become the best Revenant player possible. So what we're going to be talking about in this video has to do with his passive ability, his tactical ability, and his ultimate ability, of course. But at the end, we are going to be covering some things about how you can counter Revenant and some little tidbits and facts that you might not have known about him. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so first let's start with his passive ability, and that's going to be called Stalker. This allows you to crouch walk faster and climb walls higher. Another thing that I quickly want to mention is that Revenant also has low profile, which means he takes 5% more damage than most other legends. So just keep that in mind when selecting him. As for climbing walls higher, I found this to be most useful when climbing little walls actually, because Revenant can get up them much faster than other characters. This can be very crucial when flanking enemies or even escaping from gunfights if needed. No one likes climbing a wall for 10 years, whereas Revenant can almost do that instantly. Now when it says he can crouch walk faster, you can think of this as about the same speed as any other character's walking speed, but it gives the illusion while you're low to the ground that you're moving much quicker than that. Also, while you're crouched and low to the ground, you'll be a lot harder to hit than if you were to strafe while standing up, which is going to bring us into our second tip, which is Revenant's strafe. Okay, I'm not kidding you. The other day I was playing a game and I had a hemlock on burst fire, and I was going up against a strafing Revenant that actually knew what he was doing for once. To make the story short, I missed about every single burst on him. Revenant's strafing ability while he's crouched is like no other characters in the game. He moves at the speed of light, and when he's that low to the ground, it's insanely hard to hit him. If you are playing him, then you should definitely be strafing left to right while crouched. One thing I do want to mention quickly is that Revenant will strafe faster with different types of weapons, just like any other character in Apex Legends. For example, you strafe the fastest with pistols, submachine guns, and shotguns, then it slows down quite a bit when you get into the assault rifles, and last but not least, the slowest weapons to strafe with are going to be the light machine guns and the sniper rifles. On to the next tip, which is using Revenant's increased crouch walk speed to sneak up behind enemies. If you already didn't know, when you're crouched, your footsteps are silent in Apex Legends. Combine this with the fact that Revenant's crouch walk is the same speed that other characters can walk, and you have a recipe for silent but violent disaster. This is especially useful when flanking enemies if your teammates are shooting bullets at the other squad at the same time, because the gunfire will make it even tougher for them to hear or see you coming. Tip number 4 is going to be healing while crouched. Now I know it will never be the same as in Season 1 where you could bunny hop heal without losing any speed, but this is by far the closest thing we've had to it since then. Crouch walk healing will make it difficult for enemies to hit you because, like I mentioned earlier, you're lower to the ground and you will be moving at a decent speed. Hopefully when it's all said and done, you will have gotten that shield battery or med kit off in time to get back into the fight and melt your opponent. So now that we're done discussing Revenant's passive ability, we can move on to talking about his tactical ability, which is called Silence. This allows him to throw a device that deals damage and disables enemies' abilities for 10 seconds. I've seen a lot of people in the recent days since Season 4 dropped not using the ability correctly, and we're going to discuss that, how you should be using it in a second. But first, I want to mention a few things about his tactical. First thing is that you can actually fire your weapon while still holding down his tactical ability. This will give you the option to either silence the enemy before you enter the gunfight or during it, as you will already be shooting at the opposing player. It gets especially hectic for the enemy when you silence them because an animation will pop up on their screen, blurring their vision for a second as well, along with giving them slight damage. The second thing that you can do is aim down sights while throwing or shooting your tactical ability at enemies. This will give you an increased accuracy that you need to be tossing that tactical ability directly onto your opponents. Aiming down sights while using your tactical will also give you a better idea of where to throw it and have it land if it's from farther distances. Now we are going to move on to some ways that you should be using the silence ability, and hint hint, it's not going to be at the beginning of a gunfight. You should actually be using the tactical ability towards the middle or the end of a gunfight when you have the enemies low. The reason for this is because that's the time when the Pathfinder is going to be trying to grapple away, or when the Wraith is going to be trying to phase out. The end of the fight is when everyone usually uses their ultimate abilities or their tactical abilities, not at the beginning of fights. Another key time to use Revenant's tactical is towards the end of the game when you're rotating into the final circles. Let's say, for example, you have a team trapped behind a rock as the zone is closing in. You know the Wraith is going to portal them out, so in this situation it would be a perfect time to throw the silence grenade and cancel the enemy team's abilities. Alright, we have covered the passive and the tactical abilities for Revenant, so next up is going to be his ultimate. Revenant's ultimate is where he spawns a totem on the ground anywhere of your choosing. This totem will grant you an extra life if you happen to go down in the specified range. You can think of this range as possibly slightly larger than that of a Crypto's EMP. Once you hit the action button on the totem, you will go into battle with only your health that you have remaining, not your shield. Even though your shield will still be displayed on the screen, you will only have the health like I said. If you do happen to die while still in the range of the totem, and if it hasn't been destroyed yet, you will respawn back into the game with 1 HP and just your shield. So when you spawn back in, you're most likely going to want to have a medkit on standby. Like I mentioned earlier though, make sure to stay within the range of the totem or Revenant's ultimate will no longer be active and you can die like normal. Next thing I want to talk about is where exactly you should be putting the totem, because everyone I've been seeing in game has been putting it right in the middle of the open. This is the exact opposite of what you want to be doing when playing Revenant. You want to place the totem in a safe spot where enemies do not see it, but also close enough so that you can stay in the totem's range and respawn if you happen to go down. Some good places to put it would be in corners, behind structures, or like I said, anywhere secluded and out of sight. So far in this video, I've told you how to use Revenant and his abilities, but now we're going to dive into how to counter and stop Revenant if he's on the opposing team. First of all, you can use Caustic and Watson traps to easily kill a Revenant and his teammates right when they respawn on the totem. Caustic is especially useful as they will die instantly when they respawn, as where Watson's traps will tell you exactly where the totem is and will also stun the enemies when they resurrect. Another thing to keep in mind is that hammer point rounds can be very effective when a Revenant and his teammates go into shadow mode because they will only have their health, not their shields. And lastly, before we get into some miscellaneous tips, is that enemies can also use your death totem, so just beware of that and keep an eye on it at all times. Alright, now we're going to move on to some miscellaneous tips, and the first thing I want to say is that you should be using Revenant to gain high ground advantage whenever possible, since he can climb higher than other legends. And I've mentioned positioning more than 20 times on this channel so far, and that's because it's so dang important. Gaining the height advantage on enemies is key to giving yourself and your teammates the best chance at taking out enemies without sacrificing too much of your own health. And lastly, is that Revenant isn't actually an aggressor, he's more of a support legend. Just look at his abilities. A grenade that can silence enemy abilities and a totem that respawns you and your teammates if you go down. Sounds a lot like support to me. That's going to wrap up this Revenant guide. If you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new. It's been Sweat. Peace out.